The fluorescent lights in the community center hallway flickered as I stood frozen outside Studio B. My fingers trembling against the enrollment form I'd filled out 3 weeks ago and carried with me every Tuesday since. This was the 4th time I'd made it this far. The 4th time I'd stood at this threshold, listening to the muffled voices inside. Before turning around and going home, my name is Maya Chen. I'm 28 years old. And I'd spent the last decade hiding my body from the world. It wasn't always this way. There were photos in my mother's albums of a younger me carefree in a bathing suit at 7, wearing shorts and tank tops at 12, living in my skin without the constant awareness that would come to define my relationship with my own flesh. But somewhere between adolescence and adulthood, between the comments I'd overheard and the images I'd consumed, between the scales I'd stepped on and the mirrors I'd avoided, I'd learned to see my body as something shameful, something to conceal. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was standing outside a figure drawing class, a class where I'd signed up to be a nude model. You going in? Or are you doing some kind of performance art piece about indecision? I turned to find a woman about my age, maybe a year or 2 older, with paint-stained fingers and a smile that crinkled the corners of her dark eyes. She wore her black hair in a messy bun, and there was a streak of cobalt blue across her jawline that she seemed entirely unaware of. I am not sure yet, I admitted, which was more honesty than I planned to offer a stranger. She tilted her head, studying me with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable but instead felt oddly safe. First time modeling? Is it that obvious? Only because I've seen that exact expression on my own face in the mirror. 3 years ago, before my first time modeling. She extended her hand. Iris Park, I'm one of the artists in there, but I've also been on the platform. It's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. I shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip, the warmth of her palm. Maya Chen, and I keep telling myself that facing this fear is important, that it means something, but my feet seem to disagree with my brain. What does your heart say? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the intellectual reasons for doing this, the therapeutic value, the symbolic gesture, the reclamation of my own narrative, that I hadn't stopped to check in with the feeling beneath all that reasoning. My heart says I'm tired, I said slowly, the words forming as I spoke them. Tired of hiding. Tired of shame. Tired of living like my body is something I need to apologize for. Iris nodded, a flicker of recognition in her eyes that told me she understood on a level beyond mere sympathy. Then maybe your heart should make a decision, not your feet. She pulled open the door to Studio B and warm light spilled into the hallway along with the smell of linseed oil and charcoal. Inside, I could see easels arranged in a semicircle, artists of various ages setting up their supplies, chatting quietly. A raised platform sat in the center, draped with fabric, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. I'll be right there at my easel, Iris said softly. And I promise, once you're up there, you'll only see a room full of people grateful for the chance to capture beauty. Not judgment, just appreciation. Before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped inside. The instructor, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, introduced herself as Margaret. She showed me to a small changing area behind a screen and explained the setup with such matter-of-fact professionalism that some of my anxiety began to ebb. We'll start with some quick gesture poses. Just a few minutes each to warm up, Margaret explained. Then we'll move to a longer pose, maybe 20 minutes. You can choose any position that's comfortable. Some models bring props, books, fabric, whatever helps you feel natural. The robe stays nearby and you can take breaks whenever you need them. I changed behind the screen, my hands shaking as I removed each layer of clothing, each familiar armor I'd worn against the world. The robe Margaret had provided was soft, worn from many washings, and I wrapped it around myself like a cocoon. When I stepped out, the artists had taken their places. There were about 12 of them, ranging from college-age students to retirees, an even mix of genders, all focused on preparing their materials. Iris caught my eye from her easel and gave me an encouraging smile. Whenever you're ready, Maya, Margaret said gently. There's no rush. I walked to the platform on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The robe suddenly seemed too thin, too inadequate. Every scar, every stretch mark, every curve and fold and imperfection I'd spent years hiding seemed to pulse beneath the fabric, screaming to be noticed. But then I thought about what Iris had said. About being tired of hiding. I thought about all the years I'd skipped pool parties and beach trips, all the intimate moments I navigated in darkness, all the compliments I deflected and the mirrors I'd avoided. I thought about the weight of carrying shame, how exhausting it was to live in constant fear of being seen, and I let the rope fall. The first few seconds were the hardest. I stood there, completely exposed, fighting every instinct to cover myself, to run, to disappear. My breathing came shallow and fast, and I could feel my face burning, but then something shifted. The artists weren't staring at my body with disgust or judgment. They were looking at me the way one looks at a sunset or a mountain range, with focus and appreciation for the task of capturing something real. Their charcoal moved across paper, their eyes flicked between me and their work, measuring angles and shadows and proportions. I was simply a subject. A form, a person. Beautiful, Margaret murmured, walking around to check on her students' work. Let's start with a standing pose, Maya. Just relax into it. I took a breath and found a position, one arm raised slightly, my weight shifted to one leg. For 5 minutes, I held it and something remarkable happened. The shame that had gripped me for so long began to loosen its hold. Not completely, I could still feel it there. A familiar companion, but it no longer seemed so absolute. So defining. When Margaret called for a break, I put the robe back on and several artists approached to thank me, to tell me I was doing well. An older man mentioned that I had interesting proportions, meant as a compliment in the language of art. A young woman praised the way the light caught my collarbone, but it was Iris who approached with a water bottle and a knowing look. You okay? She asked quietly. I took the water gratefully. I think so. It's strange. I don't know. Raw, but also kind of powerful. That's the magic of it, Iris said. When you stop hiding, when you just exist without apology, you take back something that the world tries to steal from us. Especially from those of us who don't fit the narrow definition of what bodies are supposed to look like. Have you modeled recently? I asked, genuinely curious. She shook her head. Not for a year or so. I've been focusing on my own art, but modeling taught me how to see bodies differently, including my own. It taught me that every body has a story written on it, and those stories are beautiful. We talked for a few more minutes before Margaret called everyone back. The second half of the session went easier than the first. I settled into a reclining pose on the platform, draped partially with fabric, and let myself drift into a meditative state. At one point, my eyes wandered to Iris's easel. Even from a distance, I could see that her drawing was different from the others. Where the other artists seemed focused on technical accuracy, on capturing the exact proportions and shadows, Iris's work had an emotional quality to it. The lines were bold, expressive, and there was something in the way she'd drawn my face, a softness, a vulnerability that made my breath catch. When the session ended, I dressed behind the screen with a strange mixture of emotions swirling through me. Relief that it was over, yes, but also a curious disappointment. For 2 hours, I'd existed in my body without shame, and returning to the world where that shame lived felt like putting on clothes that no longer fit quite. Right, I was packing up my things when Iris appeared with her sketchbook. I wanted to show you something, she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice that I hadn't heard before. You don't have to look if you don't want to, but... She opened the sketchbook to reveal her drawing of me. I stared at it, unable to speak. The woman in the drawing was me, undeniably me, but seen through eyes that found beauty where I'd only ever seen flaws. The curves I'd agonized over were rendered with confident, appreciative strokes. The softness I'd tried to hide was portrayed as something gentle and real. And my face held an expression of quiet strength I hadn't known I was capable of. Is this really how you see me? I whispered. Iris met my eyes. This is how you are, Maya. This is the truth of you. Without all the lies we're taught to believe about our bodies. Something passed between us in that moment. A recognition that went beyond the artist-model dynamic, beyond the casual friendliness of new acquaintances. I felt seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Would you... I started, then stopped, suddenly shy. Would you want to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more about your art. The smile that spread across Iris's face was like sunlight breaking through clouds. I'd really like that. We exchanged numbers, and as I walked out of the community center that night, I realized something profound had shifted. I'd walked in carrying a decade of shame, And I was leaving with something fragile but real, the beginning of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could learn to love the body I lived in. What I didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. That Iris Park would become far more than a friend. That she would see me, all of me, in ways that would heal wounds I didn't know how to name. That learning to love my body and learning to love her would become inseparably intertwined. But that night, walking home under the stars, the possibility of it all felt like enough. The coffee shop Iris suggested was a small, quirky place called The Painted Cup, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a plant nursery in the artsy district downtown. When I arrived on Saturday afternoon, she was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window with 2 mugs in front of her, and her sketchbook open. She cleaned the paint off her jaw. I noticed, and her hair was down, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She wore a forest green sweater that brought out flecks of color in her eyes, and when she saw me, her face lit up in a way that made my stomach flutter. "I took the liberty of ordering you a vanilla latte," she said as I sat down. "But I can get you something else if you prefer." "Vanilla latte is perfect." "How did you know?" She grinned. "Lucky guess. You seem like someone who appreciates something sweet but not too complicated." I laughed, warming my hands on the mug. "Is that your artist's eye at work? Reading people's coffee preferences through careful observation?" "Something like that." She closed her sketchbook, but not before I caught a glimpse of a drawing abstract shapes and flowing lines that seemed to capture movement itself. Though I'll admit I may have been hoping you'd show up Tuesday night. I might have thought about what to say to you if you did. The confession was disarming in its honesty. "You thought about me?" "From the moment I saw you in that hallway, looking terrified and brave at the same time." Iris wrapped her hands around her own mug black coffee, no sugar. "There was something about the way you were fighting yourself, about the courage it took just to stand there." I recognized it. "You said you modeled 3 years ago. What made you do it?" Iris was quiet for a moment, her gaze drifting to the window where afternoon light painted patterns on the sidewalk. "I went through a bad breakup. My ex had a lot of opinions about my body, what I should change, how I should dress, what I should hide. After we ended, I realized I'd internalized all of it. I'd started seeing myself through her critical eyes, and I hated what I saw. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "Don't be. It taught me something important." She looked back at me, and there was a fierceness in her expression. I needed to reclaim my body as my own, not as something that existed for someone else's approval or criticism. Modeling was part of that. So was my art. I thought about the drawing she'd made of me, the way she'd seen beauty where I'd only seen flaws. "Your art is incredible. What you captured on Tuesday night, I've never seen myself like that." "Then you've never really looked," Iris said gently. "Or you've been looking through the wrong lens." We talked for hours that afternoon, our coffee growing cold as the conversation wound through art and body image. Family and dreams, the specific loneliness of feeling disconnected from your own skin. Iris told me about her work as a freelance illustrator, how she built a career creating art for children's books and progressive campaigns, work that celebrated diversity and challenged narrow beauty standards. "There's something radical about drawing bodies as they actually are," she said, her eyes bright with passion. "About showing kids that bodies come in infinite varieties and all of them are worthy of being seen, being celebrated. Every time I draw a character with a big belly or thick thighs or asymmetrical features, I'm undoing a tiny bit of the harm that this culture does." "Is that why you were at the figure drawing class?" I asked. "Partially, but also because drawing from life keeps me honest as an artist. It's easy to fall into patterns, to default to certain body types. Having real models, real humans, and all their diversity reminds me to see truly." I traced the rim of my mug with one finger, gathering courage. "Can I ask you something? When you were drawing me on Tuesday, what were you thinking?" Iris held my gaze. "I was thinking that you were beautiful. And I was thinking about how much strength it took for you to be up there, how that strength showed in every line of your body. I was thinking about the story written in your skin, the life you've lived, the journeys your body has taken you on. And I was thinking—" She paused, and a flush crept across her cheeks. "What?" I prompted softly. "I was thinking that I wanted to know you," she admitted. "Not just as a model, but as a person. I wanted to know what made you laugh, what kept you up at night, what dreams you carried." I wanted to understand the woman behind the courage. My heart was beating so fast I was sure she could hear it. I'm not brave, I said. I'm terrified most of the time. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Maya, it's acting despite it. She reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in hers. Her fingers were warm, slightly calloused from holding brushes and pencils. You stood on that platform naked, even though everything in you was screaming to run. That's the definition of brave. We sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, the noise of the coffee shop fading to background static. I dated before awkward college relationships. A few painful attempts in my 20s, but I'd never felt this particular combination of comfort and electricity with anyone. Tell me something about you that you don't usually share, Iris said. Her thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. I thought about deflecting, offering some safe revelation that wouldn't expose too much. But something about her openness, her willingness to be vulnerable, made me want to match it. I haven't let anyone see me fully naked in daylight in over 8 years, I said quietly. Even with people I was dating, I made excuses. Dim lighting, staying partially clothed, turning away. Tuesday night was the first time since I was 20 that I let anyone really see my body. Iris's expression softened with understanding. Thank you for trusting me with that. For trusting all of us. It helped that you were there, I admitted. Knowing that you'd done it before, that you understood. And then seeing your drawing, seeing myself through your eyes, it shifted something. Can I show you more of my work? Iris asked suddenly. My studio is just a few blocks from here. I'd love for you to see what I've been working on. I should have felt nervous about going to her private space, this woman I barely knew. But instead, I felt drawn forward by curiosity and something deeper, a sense that Iris Park might be someone who could help me find my way back to myself. I'd love that. I said her studio was a converted warehouse space that she shared with 3 other artists, each person claiming a corner with their easels and supplies and controlled chaos. Iris's section was near the windows where northern light flooded in, illuminating canvases stacked against the walls. Fair warning, she said as we entered. It's a mess. I tend to work on multiple pieces at once, and organizational skills are not my strength. But I barely heard her. I was transfixed by the paintings. They were all of bodies diverse. Real, unidealized bodies painted with such love and attention that they seemed to glow from within. A fat woman dancing, her flesh captured mid-movement with joy radiating from the canvas. An elderly person with sagging skin, painted with such dignity that every wrinkle seemed like a badge of honor. A trans man's chest, scars rendered in loving detail, strength evident in every brushstroke. Iris, I breathed. These are extraordinary. I call it my Bodies of Truth series, she said, coming to stand beside me. I've been working on it for 2 years now. The idea is to counter every airbrushed, photoshopped, filtered image we're bombarded with. To show bodies as they are messy, asymmetrical, marked by time and experience, and to celebrate that reality. I moved from painting to painting, overwhelmed by the emotion in each piece. These weren't clinical figure studies. They were love letters to flesh and bone, to the vehicles that carried us through life. How do you find your models? I asked, different ways. Some are friends. Some I meet at the figure drawing classes. Some reach out after seeing my work online. She pulled out a canvas that had been facing the wall and turned it to show me. This one is from last week. Her name is Rebecca. She came to me after a double mastectomy, said she wanted to see her changed body portrayed as powerful, not broken. The painting showed a woman's torso. Chest flat and scarred, arms raised in a gesture of triumph. It was unflinchingly honest and breathtakingly beautiful. You give people a gift, I said softly. You help them see themselves as valuable. I try to paint the truth, Iris corrected. The value was always there. I just make it visible. I turned to face her fully. We were standing close now, close enough that I could see the paint permanently embedded under her fingernails. Smell the faint scent of linseed oil and something floral her shampoo. Maybe, would you... I started, my voice barely above a whisper. Would you paint me? Not for the series necessarily, but just I want to see myself the way you see me. Something flickered across Iris's face, surprise. Pleasure and something more intense that made my pulse quicken. I would be honored, she said. But Maya, you need to know if I paint you, I'll want to capture everything. Not just your body, but your story. The vulnerability and the strength. It would be intimate. I know, I said. And I did know, even if I couldn't fully articulate what I was asking for. I just knew that I wanted Iris to see me, to really see me and to show me what she found. When? She asked. Whenever you're ready. Iris smiled, and it was like watching the sunrise. How about next Saturday? Come in the morning when the light is best. Wear comfortable clothes you can easily change out of. And Maya? Yes? Don't try to prepare or change anything about yourself. Just come as you are. The week leading up to Saturday passed in a strange blur of anticipation and anxiety. I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror in the morning something I'd avoided for years, forcing myself to look at my reflection without immediately cataloging flaws. It was harder than I expected. My brain had well-worn pathways of self-criticism, automatic thoughts that fired off at the mere sight of my body. Too soft here. Too thick there. Asymmetrical breasts. Stretch marks mapping my stomach like tidal patterns. Scars from childhood accidents and adult clumsiness, but I tried to do what Iris had said, to look for the story instead of the flaws. These thighs had carried me through marathons and dance floors, had climbed mountains and knelt in gardens. This stomach had digested countless meals, had housed my organs, had laughed until it hurt. These arms had had friends and lifted boxes and created things. This face had smiled and cried and kissed and lived 28 years of experience. It didn't make the criticism disappear, but it added another voice to the chorus. A kinder voice. One that sounded a bit like Iris. The mirror work was exhausting in ways I hadn't anticipated. Each morning, I'd set a timer for 5 minutes and force myself to stand there naked, looking. Some days I'd cry. Some days I'd get angry at how hard this was. How unfair it felt that loving my own body required this much work. One morning, midweek, I called my best friend Jenna. I don't know if I can do this, I told her, pacing my small apartment. The painting session is in 3 days and I feel like I'm falling apart. Tell me what's happening, Jenna said. Her voice calm and grounding. I look at myself and all I can see are the things I hate. And I'm supposed to let Iris paint me? To capture all of this forever on canvas? What if she realizes I'm not actually worth painting? What if Maya? Jenna interrupted gently. Do you trust Iris? Yes. Do you believe she sees beauty when she looks at you? I think so. Then maybe you can borrow her eyes for now. Maybe you don't have to fully believe you're beautiful yet. You just have to trust that she does. The conversation helped, but the anxiety didn't fully dissipate. I threw myself into work. I was a freelance graphic designer, which meant I could bury myself in projects when I needed distraction. But even as I worked, my mind kept drifting to Saturday, to standing vulnerable in Iris's studio, to the terrifying intimacy of being truly seen. We texted throughout the week, nothing heavy, just little check-ins that made me smile. She'd sent me photos of her breakfast, elaborate vegetable omelets that she claimed to be terrible at making but looked delicious. Selfies with her artist friends, she making silly faces that somehow still looked adorable. And one night, a picture of the sunset from her studio window with the caption, "Thinking about how to capture this color. Also thinking about you." That message had kept me awake for hours. My heart doing complicated gymnastics in my chest. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that smelled like new beginnings. I dressed in simple leggings and a loose sweater, left my hair unstyled, wore no makeup. Come as you are, she'd said, when I arrived at the studio. Iris was waiting outside with 2 cups of coffee and a nervous energy that matched my own. I couldn't remember if you'd had breakfast, she said, handing me one of the cups along with a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. So I got us cinnamon rolls from the bakery down the street. They're life-changing. You're nervous, I observed, touched by the realization. Terrified, she admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. I've painted dozens of people, but I've never been quite this nervous. I think it's because it matters. You matter. We sat on the steps outside the studio, eating cinnamon rolls that lived up to their billing, watching the neighborhood wake up around us. A man walked by with 3 dogs of varying sizes. A group of cyclists whizzed past. 2 elderly women chatted on the corner, their conversation punctuated by laughter. Tell me something, Iris said suddenly. What's your best memory? The moment you felt most alive? I thought about it, letting my mind wander back through years. I was 16, I said slowly. And I convinced my parents to let me go to this outdoor music festival with friends. It rained like torrential downpour rain and everyone ran for cover except me. I just stood there in the middle of this field with rain soaking through my clothes, music still playing, and I felt completely present. Completely myself. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Iris said softly. That's the feeling I try to capture in my work. That sense of being utterly, fully alive in your body. What about you? I asked. Your best memory? She was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant. I was 7 and my grandmother was teaching me to paint. She wasn't an artist, she was a nurse, but she loved colors. We were in her garden and she told me to paint what I felt, not what I saw. So I painted the sun as purple and the flowers as blue and the sky as green. And when I worried I'd done it wrong, she said, "If that's your truth, then it's right." It was the first time I understood that there were multiple ways of seeing. She sounds wonderful. She was. She died when I was 12, but her watercolors are still in my apartment. Sometimes I look at them and remember that permission she gave me to see things my own way. We finished our coffee and rolls, and Iris stood, extending her hand to help me up. Ready? No, my fear whispered. You're not ready. You'll never be ready. But I took her hand anyway. Inside, the studio was flooded with morning light. Iris had set up a space with fabric draped over a low platform, pillows arranged for comfort, a privacy screen in the corner where I could change. Classical music played softly from a speaker, something with piano and strings that felt both calming and melancholy. Take your time, Iris said, gesturing to the screen. Change when you feel ready. I'll be prepping my supplies. Behind the screen, I undressed slowly, folding each piece of clothing with unnecessary care. My hands were shaking. This was different from the figure drawing class, I realized. There, I'd been one of many models, and the artists had been strangers focused on technique. Here, it was just Iris and me, and this felt like revealing something deeper than skin. I wrapped myself in the robe she'd left for me, and stepped out. Iris had her back to me, organizing paints and brushes, and for a moment I just watched her. She moved with such confidence in this space, such certainty. Her natural habitat. I'm ready, I said, though my voice shook. She turned and the look she gave me was so gentle it almost broke me. We can take this as slow as you need, Maya. If at any point you want to stop, just say so. This is your choice, your body, your comfort. Nothing else matters, I nodded, not trusting my voice. I thought we might start with you just sitting, Iris suggested. Natural position, however you're most comfortable. Once you find that, you can remove the robe if you're ready. I settled onto the platform, the fabric soft beneath me, pillows supporting my back. I pulled my knees up slightly, wrapped my arms around them, a protective position. I realized, but one that felt true. And then, before I could overthink it, I let the robe fall away. The air was warm on my skin. Iris had positioned a space heater nearby, thoughtful of comfort. But I still felt exposed, vulnerable, every nerve ending aware of the light touching me. Breathe, Iris said softly. She hadn't moved to her easel yet. Instead, she sat down a few feet away from me, cross-legged on the floor, her eyes meeting mine. Maya, look at me. Not as an artist looking at a model. Just as one person to another. I met her gaze, and something passed between us, recognition, understanding, connection. You are so beautiful, she said simply. Not in spite of anything, not if you changed anything. Just as you are right now, you are stunning. Tears welled up in my eyes. I don't know how to believe that. I know. But maybe you can start by believing that I believe it. Can you trust my eyes, even if you can't trust your own yet? I nodded, a tear spilling over and tracking down my cheek. Iris stood slowly, moving to her easel. I'm going to start sketching now. Just preliminary work, finding the composition. You can move when you need to, talk if you want to, or stay quiet. Whatever feels right. For a while, the only sounds were the scratch of her charcoal on canvas, the music in the background, my own breathing gradually slowing to match the rhythm of her work. I let myself settle into the position, let my body relax into its natural state without trying to hold everything in. Tell me about your first crush, Iris said after a while. Her eyes flicking between me and the canvas. The request surprised me into a laugh. Random question. I like to talk while I work. Helps capture something more alive. And I'm genuinely curious. I got back. Her name was Sarah. I was 14, she was mine. I didn't understand what I was feeling at the time, just knew that I wanted to be around her constantly, that I memorized the way she laughed, that I got butterflies every time our hands accidentally touched, passing beakers back and forth. Did you ever tell her? God, no. I barely admitted it to myself. It took me until college to really accept that I was gay, and even then, I was so wrapped up in body shame that dating felt impossible. How could I let someone close enough to want me when I couldn't stand being in my own skin? Iris paused in her sketching, her expression thoughtful. Do you think the two are connected? The body shame and accepting your sexuality? Maybe, I said slowly, the thought forming as I spoke. There's something about being a queer woman, about existing outside the default narrative that made me hyper-aware of my body. Like, I was already different in one way, so every other way I differed from the ideal felt magnified. That makes sense, Iris said softly. Intersectionality of marginalization. Each thing compounding the others. We fell into a comfortable rhythm, Iris asking questions. Me answering, the conversation weaving through childhood and family. Coming out stories and first loves. Dreams and fears and the everyday mundane details that make up a life. At some point, I forgot I was naked. Or rather, my nakedness became just a fact, neutral and uncondemned. I was simply a body in space, existing and being witnessed, and for the first time in longer than I could remember. That felt okay. After about an hour, Iris set down her charcoal. Want to take a break? See what I've got so far? I wrapped the robe around myself and walked over to the easel, my heart pounding. What would I see? How had she rendered me? The sketch took my breath away. It was me unmistakably, but seen with such. Love wasn't quite the right word. Reverence, maybe? Or acceptance. The lines of my body were drawn with confidence, with celebration of curves and softness. My face held a thoughtful expression, and there was a light in my eyes that I rarely saw in photos of myself. Iris. I whispered. I'm going to build on this, she said, standing close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. Add color, depth, detail. But I wanted you to see the foundation, see what I see when I look at you. I turned to face her, and suddenly we were very close, her face inches from mine. I could see flecks of gold in her dark eyes, a small scar above her left eyebrow, the way her lips parted slightly as her breath quickened. Thank you, I said softly. For seeing me. Thank you for letting me. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility. I could feel the warmth radiating from her body, could smell her shampoo and something uniquely her. My heart was hammering so loudly I was certain she could hear it. And then, closing a distance that felt simultaneously vast and infinitesimal, I kissed her. Her lips were soft, warm, and for a heartbeat she was still surprised. Then she was kissing me back, her hand coming up to cup my face with such tenderness that I felt tears prick my eyes again. The kiss was gentle, exploratory, asking and answering questions in the same breath. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. I've been wanting to do that since the coffee shop. I admitted. I've been wanting you to do that since the hallway outside Studio B. She countered, a smile playing at her lips. We stood there, foreheads touching, and I marveled at how right this felt. How being vulnerable, truly, completely vulnerable, had led me here. Maya, Iris said softly. I need you to know I'm not interested in casual. I like you. Really like you. And I want to see where this goes if you do. I do, I said without hesitation. But I'm also scared. I'm broken in some ways. Iris, I'm working on it, but the body stuff. The shame, it's not going to disappear overnight. I'm not asking for perfect, she said, pulling back to look me in the eyes. I'm asking for honest. For real. I've got my own damage, my own fears. But I think we could be good for each other. I think we could help each other heal. I kissed her again, and this time it was deeper, more certain. When we broke apart, I was smiling. So what now? I asked. Iris glanced at the canvas, then back at me, her eyes sparkling with mischief and warmth. Now, I suggest you put the robe back on before I get too distracted to paint. We've got at least another hour of work ahead if I'm going to do you justice. And then if you're free, maybe you'd like to get dinner. There's this Thai place near my apartment that makes the most incredible curry. That sounds perfect. We spent the rest of the morning in the studio, falling into an easy rhythm. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we sat in comfortable silence. Iris worked with focused intensity, pausing occasionally to step back and assess, to adjust a line or shadow. I watched her work, fascinated by the concentration on her face. The way she bit her lower lip when something wasn't quite right. Around noon, she declared the underpainting complete. "I'll need a few more sessions to finish it properly," she explained as we cleaned up. "Building up layers, adding detail. But the bones of it are there." As I dressed behind the screen, I heard her moving around the studio, putting away supplies. When I emerged, she was waiting with her jacket on, that same nervous excitement from the morning back in her expression. "Ready?" she asked, offering her hand. I took it, lacing our fingers together. "Ready." Dating Iris was like learning a new language, one where the words were glances and touches, where the grammar was vulnerability and the syntax was trust. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern of long studio sessions where she painted and I modeled, followed by dinners that stretched into evenings. Conversations that meandered through every subject imaginable. She took me to art galleries and introduced me to her friends. A colorful collection of artists and activists who welcomed me with open arms. We cooked together in her tiny kitchen, my mediocre chopping skills no match for her culinary intuition. We watched old movies curled up on our couch, her running commentary making me laugh until my sides hurt, and slowly, carefully. We navigated the physical intimacy that came with falling for someone. Iris was patient in a way that made me ache. She let me set the pace, never pushing, always asking permission before crossing new thresholds. That first kiss in the studio led to more kisses, soft ones stolen between brushstrokes, passionate ones that left us both breathless, gentle goodnight kisses that promised more to come. But I could feel my old fears circling, waiting for the moment when things would progress beyond kissing. The thought of being intimate with Iris in private, without the structure and safety of the modeling sessions, terrified me in ways I struggled to articulate. 3 weeks into dating, she invited me to stay over for the first time. We'd been at a gallery opening for one of her friends, and the night had run late. Iris's apartment was closer than mine, and when she suggested I crash there, something in her eyes told me she was offering more than just convenience. "I'd like that," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Her apartment was a studio loft, all exposed brick and tall windows, art covering every available wall space. It smelled like her-like paint and vanilla candles and that floral shampoo I'd come to associate with her presence. "Fair warning," she said, moving around to light candles. "My bedroom area is not separated from the rest of the space. It's literally just a bed in the corner. Very bohemian, very not private." "I like it," I said honestly. There was something intimate about seeing how she lived. The carefully curated chaos that felt so essentially. Iris thought we changed into sleep clothes. She lent me a soft t-shirt that smelled like her laundry detergent and brushed. Our teeth side by side at her bathroom, sink with an ease that felt both domestic and surreal. How had this become my life? How had I gotten so lucky? In bed, she pulled me close, my back against her chest, her arm draped over my waist. I could feel every point of contact between our bodies, her breath on my neck, her knees tucked behind mine, her hands split across my stomach. "Is this okay?" she murmured against my hair. "More than okay," I whispered back. We lay like that in the darkness, the city lights filtering through her windows, and I felt something unlock in my chest. This being held, being wanted, being chosen, this was what I'd been afraid I'd never have. "Maya?" Iris's voice was soft, hesitant. "Can I tell you something? You can tell me if it's too much, if it's too soon." My heart started racing. "You can tell me anything." "I'm falling in love with you," she said quietly. "I know it's only been a few weeks, and maybe that's crazy, but I needed you to know. The way you're brave even when you're terrified, the way you see the world, the way you laugh, it's all just... You're extraordinary, Maya, and I'm falling." I turned in her arms so I could face her, my eyes adjusting enough to make out her features in the dim light. Her expression was vulnerable, open, waiting. "I'm falling too," I admitted. "And it scares me because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone love me when I'm still learning to love myself." We'll figure it out together, she said, her hand coming up to stroke my cheek. There's no manual for this. We keep showing up. We keep being honest. We keep choosing each other. I kissed her then, and it was different from the other kisses we'd shared. This one carried weight, acknowledgement of what we were building. Her hand slid into my hair, and I pressed closer, wanting to eliminate every inch of space between us. The kiss deepened, and I felt her hand move to my hip, a question in her touch. My breath hitched, fear and want warring in my chest. Hey, she said, pulling back slightly. We don't have to do anything more. This is enough. You are enough. I want to, I said, and I meant it. I'm just scared. Of what, specifically? Maybe if we name it, it'll feel less overwhelming. I took a shaky breath. I'm scared that when you see me, really see me. Not as a model in your studio, but as someone you're intimate with, you'll be disappointed. Or disgusted. I'm scared my body will be a turnoff. I'm scared I won't know what to do, or I'll do something wrong, or Maya. She said my name like a prayer, stopping my spiral. Look at me. Do you trust me? Yes. Then trust this. I have seen you. I've spent hours studying every curve, every line, every detail of your body. I've memorized the way light falls across your skin, the specific shade of your scars, the exact way your breath changes when you relax. There is no part of you that I haven't already witnessed and found beautiful. But that's different, I protested. That's art. This is also art, she interrupted gently. Making love is art, Maya. It's two people creating something together. Something that doesn't exist outside the connection between them. And yes, it's vulnerable and messy and imperfect, but that's what makes it real. She kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my nose. We don't have to rush this. But when you're ready, if you're ready, I want you to know that I want you. All of you. Exactly as you are. I buried my face in her neck, overwhelmed by emotion. What if I'm ready now but also terrified? I felt her smile against my hair. Then we'll be terrified together. And we'll go slow. And we'll stop if you need to stop. Communication, remember? That's our superpower. Okay, I whispered. Okay, what followed was the most tender, patient exploration I'd ever experienced. Iris treated my body like one of her canvases, something to be studied and appreciated, yes, but also something alive and responsive and worthy of reverence. She asked permission before removing my shirt, and when I nodded, she pulled it off slowly, giving me time to change my mind. Then she just looked at me, her eyes soft in the candlelight. You're so beautiful, she said. And I almost believed her touches were feather-light at first, giving me time to adjust, to breathe through the vulnerability. She traced the lines of my collarbone, the curves of my breasts, the softness of my stomach, narrating what she saw with words that sounded like poetry. This scar here, she said, touching a pale line near my ribs. Tell me its story. Fell off my bike when I was 9, I managed, my voice breathy. Split my side open on a rock. It's beautiful. Like a map of your courage. She continued her exploration, and I found myself relaxing into her. When she touched the stretch marks on my thighs, I flinched. These were some of my most hated features. The silver lines that had appeared seemingly overnight during puberty and never faded. But Iris just smiled. Tiger stripes, she said. That's what my grandmother called them. Marks of a body that grew and changed and lived. Nothing to hide. Tears leaked from the corners of my eyes, and she kissed them away. We can stop, she offered again. No, I said firmly. Don't stop. Please don't stop seeing me. So she didn't. And when she asked if she could touch me more intimately, I said yes. And when my own hands began to explore her body-strong shoulders, small breasts, the curve of her waist, she encouraged me, guided me, showed me what she liked. We moved together awkwardly at first, finding rhythm, learning each other's languages of pleasure. There were moments I tensed up, moments my brain tried to spiral into self-criticism. But Iris would notice and pause, bringing me back to the present with gentle words and softer touches. Stay here with me, she'd whisper. Right here. Right now. And I would breathe and return to my body, to her body, to the undeniable reality that I was desired and desiring. That pleasure was my birthright as much as anyone's. When it was over, when we'd both fallen apart in each other's arms, Gasping and complete, we lay tangled together. Sweaty and satisfied, and somehow more vulnerable than we'd been even moments before. "Hi," Iris said, kissing my shoulder. "Hi," I replied, a laugh bubbling up through the emotion in my chest. "How are you feeling?" I took inventory, my body satiated and heavy, my mind quiet for once, my heart full to bursting. "I feel present," I said finally. Like I was actually here in my body experiencing this. Not watching from outside, not disconnected, just here. "That's beautiful," she said. "And exactly how it should be." We talked late into the night, that particular brand of intimate conversation that happens in the aftermath of firsts. She told me about her ex, about the ways that relationship had damaged her sense of self, about rebuilding afterward. I told her about my family, about being the disappointing daughter who couldn't fit the mold, about finding my own way. "My parents still don't really get the gay thing," I admitted. "They love me, but they also keep waiting for me to bring home a nice man and settle down. They don't say it outright, but I can feel the disappointment." "That must be lonely," Iris said, her fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "It is. But this makes it feel less so. Like maybe I don't need their approval as much as I thought I did." "You don't need anyone's approval, Maya. Not theirs, not society's, not even mine. The only approval that matters is your own." "I'm working on that part," I said wryly. "I know. And I see the work you're doing. Every time you show up to model, every time you let me touch you, every time you choose to be present in your body instead of dissociating, that's the work. You're doing it." I felt tears prick my eyes again. "How are you so patient with me?" "Because you're worth it," she said simply. "And because healing isn't linear. We all have our stuff, Maya. Mine just manifests differently than yours." "Tell me yours," I requested. "Your stuff. I want to know all of you, not just the parts that are easy to love." So she told me about her struggles with perfectionism, about the way she sometimes worked herself to exhaustion trying to make every painting perfect. She told me about the anxiety that kept her up at night, worrying about money and career and whether her art mattered. She told me about the ways her ex had made her feel small, and how sometimes she still heard those critical voices in her head. "We're all just works in progress," she concluded. "All of us stumbling through, trying to be better than we were yesterday. The key is finding people who see our rough edges and love us anyway, not in spite of them, but including them." "I see your rough edges," I said. "And I'm falling in love with all of it." We fell asleep wrapped around each other. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I slept through the night without nightmares about being exposed, being seen, being judged and found wanting. The painting Iris created of me took 6 weeks to complete. She worked on it during our regular sessions, building up layers of color, adding depth and shadow and light until the canvas seemed to glow with life. She wouldn't let me see it as she worked, turning the easel away whenever I approached, claiming she wanted me to experience the finished piece all at once. It drove me crazy with anticipation, but I respected her artistic process. We'd fallen into a rhythm of intimacy by then, our relationship deepening with each passing week. I spent more nights at our place than my own, and we'd started talking about me subletting my apartment and just moving in with her. It felt fast, but also inevitable, like we were simply catching up to where we were always meant to be. I continued modeling for the figure drawing class every Tuesday, my confidence growing with each session. The shame that had once felt insurmountable was still there. I don't think it ever fully disappears, but it no longer controlled me. I could acknowledge it and move forward anyway. Iris's friends became my friends. Her world became my world. I met other queer artists and activists, found community in places I never thought to look. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. 2 months after our first kiss, Iris approached me with a nervous energy I'd come to recognize as significant. "So," she said, sitting down beside me on her couch where I'd been reading, "I have something to ask you, and you can absolutely say no if it's too much." I set my book aside, giving her my full attention. "What's up?" "There's a gallery that wants to do a show of my Bodies of Truth series. It's a pretty big deal. They're well respected in the community, and it could really raise the profile of my work." "Iris, that's amazing," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Why do you look worried?" "This is incredible news." "Because," she said, pulling back to look at me seriously, "I want to include your painting." It's the centerpiece of the series, Maya. It's the best work I've ever done. And I think it's because of what you brought to it, your vulnerability, your courage, your truth. But I would never show it without your permission. Never. My stomach dropped. You mean, put it in public? Where anyone could see it? Yes, she said carefully. But you could be anonymous if you wanted. I don't have to include your name or any identifying information. People would just see it as art. I stood up, needing to move, to process. The thought of that painting of my naked body rendered in loving detail being displayed for strangers to see, to judge, to comment on. It brought all my old fears rushing back. Can I see it first? I asked, before I decide? Of course. Let me get it. She disappeared into her studio space and returned carrying a large canvas wrapped in cloth. Carefully, she set it up on her makeshift easel and removed the covering. I gasped. The woman in the painting was me. Undeniably, but also somehow more than me. Iris had captured not just my physical form, but something essential about my spirit. I sat on the draped platform, one knee drawn up, my arms wrapped loosely around it. My gaze directed slightly off to the side, contemplative, vulnerable. But also strong. The colors were rich in warm earth tones and soft pinks and golds that made my skin seem to glow. She'd rendered every detail with loving attention. The curve of my hip, the softness of my stomach, the texture of my hair. But more than that, she'd captured something in my expression, a mixture of fear and hope, a fragility and strength. It was the most beautiful I'd ever seen myself. Iris, I breathed. This is. I don't have words. She came to stand beside me, looking at her work with critical eyes. It's you, she said simply. The truth of you. Your body, yes, but also your heart. Your journey. Everything you've overcome to sit on that platform and just be. I couldn't stop staring at it. You see me like this? Always, she said softly. I thought about what it would mean to have this displayed publicly. To have strangers see my naked body, to have them form opinions, to potentially face criticism or judgment. Every instinct screamed at me to protect myself, to keep this private, to hide, but then I thought about the other paintings in her series. Rebecca with her mastectomy scars. The fat dancer. The elderly person celebrating their aging body. Each of them had chosen to be seen, to stand as testament to bodies that existed outside the narrow margins of acceptability. And I thought about the scared woman who'd stood in that hallway outside Studio B. Too terrified to step through the door. How far she'd come. How much she'd grown. I want to do it, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. But not anonymously. I want my name on it. I want people to know that this is me, that I chose this, that I'm not ashamed. Iris turned to me, eyes wide. Maya, are you sure? You don't have to. I'm sure, I interrupted. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. This painting, it's not just art, Iris. It's proof that healing is possible. It's evidence that shame can be overcome. If putting it in a gallery helps even one person see themselves differently, then it's worth the risk. She pulled me into a fierce hug. You are so brave, she whispered against my hair. I learned from the best, I said. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation for the gallery show. Iris worked with the gallery owners to arrange the space, to decide on lighting and placement. The Bodies of Truth series would take up the entire main gallery. With my painting featured prominently at the center of the collection, I helped where I could. But mostly I worked on managing my anxiety about the opening. I told my parents about it, which was a conversation fraught with tension. They didn't understand why I'd want to display myself this way, why I'd choose to be so exposed. But when I explained it as part of my healing journey, my mother softened slightly. I don't pretend to understand it, she said over the phone. But I can hear in your voice that you're happy. Happier than I've heard you in years. So if this is part of that, then I support you. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was enough. I also told my close friends, bracing myself for judgment that never came. Instead, they were excited for me, proud even. My best friend Jenna demanded to be invited to the opening. Declaring herself my personal hype woman for the evening, the night before the gallery opening, I couldn't sleep. I lay in Iris's arms, my mind spinning through every possible scenario, every potential criticism, every nightmare outcome. Talk to me, Iris said quietly, stroking my hair. What's going on in that beautiful brain? I keep thinking about who might come, I admitted. What they might say. What if people are cruel? What if they laugh? What if someone I know sees it and judges me? All of those things might happen, Iris said honestly. I can't promise they won't. People can be shitty, and the internet especially can be brutal. But Maya, here's what I know for certain. Your worth is not determined by other people's opinions. The courage it took for you to sit for this painting, to agree to have it shown, that courage is yours. No one can take it away with their words. What if I regret it? Then you regret it and we deal with it together. But I don't think you will. I think tomorrow night when you see yourself on that wall alongside all these other beautiful, diverse bodies, you're going to feel proud. I think you're going to realize that you're part of something bigger than your fear. How are you so wise? I asked, attempting lightness despite the emotion clogging my throat. I'm not wise. I'm just someone who loves you and believes in you, even when you can't quite believe in yourself yet. I kissed her then, pouring everything I couldn't say into the press of lips. The tangle of tongues, the desperate need to be close. We made love slowly, tenderly, and when I finally fell asleep in the early hours of the morning, it was with a sense of peace I hadn't expected to find. The gallery opening was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Friday. I spent the entire day oscillating between excitement and terror, changing outfits 5 times before Iris finally intervened. Wear the green dress, she said firmly. It makes your eyes look incredible and you feel confident in it. That's what matters. So I wore the green dress, a soft, flowing thing that I'd bought on a whim months ago and never had occasion to wear. I did my makeup carefully, left my hair down in loose waves, and when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She looked brave. She looked ready. You are so stunning, Iris said, coming up behind me to wrap her arms around my waist. She wore black slacks and a crisp white button-up, her hair pulled back in a low bun, looking every inch the professional artist. Are you ready? No, I said honestly. But let's go anyway. The gallery was already filling with people when we arrived. I recognized some of Iris's friends and fellow artists, but there were many strangers too: collectors, art enthusiasts, journalists from local papers. The sight of so many people made my palms sweat. Iris squeezed my hand. You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to. You can just be here, observe, experience it however feels right. But as we walked into the main gallery space, I stopped breathing altogether. The Bodies of Truth series was stunning. Each painting was gorgeously lit, the colors seeming to vibrate with life. The diversity of bodies represented was breathtaking, fat and thin. Young and old, scarred and smooth, disabled and able-bodied. People of every gender and race and size, all rendered with the same loving attention that Iris had given to my painting. And there, in the center of the far wall, was me. My painting was larger than I'd remembered, commanding attention impossible to miss. Seeing it here in this public space was entirely different from seeing it in Iris's studio. Here it was a statement, a declaration, a refusal to hide. I watched as people moved through the gallery, stopping to read the plaques beside each painting, to study the brushstrokes, to murmur to their companions. When they reached my painting, they paused longer. Some smiled. Some seemed moved. One older woman had tears in her eyes. It's incredible, someone said nearby. I turned to see a young woman, maybe early 20s, standing with her girlfriend. The vulnerability in it, the way it captures both strength and fear, it's everything I feel about my own body. Her girlfriend nodded. Makes me want to be braver. You know? They moved on, and I felt something crack open in my chest. This was why. This moment, this connection, this was why I'd agreed to be seen. Throughout the evening, I watched people interact with the paintings. I overheard conversations about body positivity and representation, about the need for more diverse images in art and media. Several people asked Iris about her process, about how she found her models, about the intention behind the series, and when they asked about my painting specifically, she told them with my permission that the model was here tonight, that I'd been brave enough to not just sit for the portrait, but to have it displayed with my name attached. Some people sought me out after that, wanting to thank me, to tell me their own stories of body shame and slow acceptance. A middle-aged man told me about his struggle with weight and how seeing bodies, like his, celebrated in art had changed something in him. A transgender woman spoke about learning to love her body post-transition, about the journey of coming home to herself. Each conversation was a gift, a reminder that vulnerability creates connection, that shame thrives in secrecy but withers in the light. Jenna appeared at some point, pulling me into a fierce hug. "I'm so fucking proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You did this, Maya. You're a goddamn warrior." "I'm really not," I protested. "You are," Iris said, appearing at my other side with champagne for all of us. "You're the bravest person I know." As the evening wore on, I found myself standing in front of my own painting, really looking at it, trying to see it the way these strangers saw it, not as a catalog of flaws and failures, but as a portrait of a whole person. A person who'd survived and grown and chosen courage over comfort. Beautiful, isn't it? I turned to find an elderly woman beside me, her eyes kind behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Thank you," I said automatically. "You're the model, aren't you?" she asked, and when I nodded, she smiled. "I thought so. I can see it in your face, the same expression of tender courage that the artist captured. It's rare to see such honesty in portraiture." "It was terrifying," I admitted. "The best things usually are," she said. "I'm an artist myself, retired now, but I spent 40 years painting. And I can tell you that what your artist did here, what you allowed her to do, is special. She didn't just paint your body. She painted your soul." The woman moved on, but her words stayed with me. Iris had painted my soul. She'd seen past the surface shame to the truth underneath, and she'd shown it to the world. I found her across the room, talking animatedly with a gallery owner about a potential commission. As if sensing my gaze, she looked up and smiled, excusing herself to come to me. "How are you holding up?" she asked, taking my hand. "I'm good," I said, and realized I meant it. "Really good, actually. It's overwhelming, but in the best way. You've had a lot of people wanting to talk to you. You're kind of the star of the show." I laughed. "That's because of your painting, not because of me." "No," she said seriously. "It's because you had the courage to be painted. The art is just a reflection of that courage." As the evening wound down and the crowd began to thin, Iris and I stood together in front of my painting, her arm around my waist, my head on her shoulder. "I can't believe I almost didn't do this," I said quietly. "Almost didn't walk into that figure drawing class. Almost didn't agree to model for you. Almost didn't let you show this painting. I almost let fear win." "But you didn't," Iris said. "You walked through the fear again and again. That's what counts. I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," she countered. "But I'm honored I got to witness it. Got to be part of your journey." Later that night, back at her apartment, we collapsed onto the couch in our fancy clothes, too tired to even change. "Read me some of the comments from the gallery's social media," I said. Half afraid but also curious, Iris pulled up the gallery's Instagram on her phone. They'd posted photos at the exhibition, including mine, and the comments were rolling in. She scrolled through, reading aloud. "This exhibition is everything. Needed this tonight. The painting of the woman on the platform literally brought me to tears. So powerful. When will art stop celebrating obesity? Oh, there's always one asshole. Who is the model for the centerpiece? I want to thank her personally for her courage. These paintings make me feel seen in a way I never have before. Already pre-ordered the exhibition catalog. This is going on my wall. Wait, someone wants to put a print of my painting on their wall?" I asked, incredulous. Iris grinned. "Multiple someones, apparently. The gallery said they've already had inquiries about prints. You might be famous, love." The thought should have terrified me, but instead I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. If my vulnerability could help someone else feel less alone, then it was worth every moment of fear. "I love you," I said suddenly. I don't think I say it enough, but I love you, Iris. You changed my life. "You changed your own life," she said, kissing me softly. "I just held up a mirror and showed you what was already there. Then I love you for the mirror. And for everything else?" We made love that night with a new freedom, a new abandon. I let her turn on all the lights, let her see every inch of me without shame or hesitation. And when she told me I was beautiful, I let myself believe her. Before we left the gallery that night, one more significant interaction occurred. An older woman approached us, her silver hair styled elegantly, her expression warm but serious. "Excuse me," she said, addressing both of us. "I'm Dr. Catherine Morrison. I run the Women's Studies Department at the university downtown. I've been following your work, Iris, for some time now." Iris straightened slightly, professional mode engaging. "Thank you. That means a lot. I'm particularly interested in this series," Dr. Morrison continued, gesturing around the gallery. "The intersection of art, body politics, and feminist theory is central to my research. I'd love to talk to you both about possibly doing a lecture series or workshop at the university. We have funding for visiting artists and speakers who can address body image, representation, and activism through creative practice." I felt Iris's hand squeeze mine, excitement radiating from her. "We'd be very interested," Iris said. "Maya and I have actually been developing curriculum for exactly this kind of work." Dr. Morrison smiled. "Perfect. Let me give you my card. Call me next week and we'll discuss details. I think our students would benefit tremendously from hearing your perspectives, both the artist's journey in creating this work, and Maya, your experience being the subject and co-creating the narrative." After she left, Iris pulled me into a tight hug. "Did that just happen? A university wants us to teach?" "It just happened," I confirmed, laughing at her excitement. "We're apparently educators now, in addition to everything else." The drive home was filled with animated conversation about what we might teach, how we might structure it, what impact we could have on young people still forming their relationships with their bodies. "Imagine if we'd had something like this when we were in college," I said. "How different things might have been." "That's exactly why we have to do it," Iris said firmly. "We can be the resource we needed and never had." When we finally made it back to the apartment, exhausted and exhilarated, we collapsed onto the couch still in our fancy clothes. Iris pulled out her phone to document the moment, a selfie of us, disheveled and happy, with the caption, "The art is in the being seen. Thank you to everyone who came tonight and saw with open hearts." The post got hundreds of likes and comments within the first hour, but I was too tired to read through them. Instead, I just sat with Iris, processing the enormity of what had happened. "I keep thinking about past me," I said quietly. "The woman who couldn't even look at herself in the mirror. If someone had told her that in 2 years she'd be publicly displayed in a gallery, that people would want to hear her speak about body acceptance, she would have thought it was impossible." "But it wasn't impossible," Iris said. "It was just terrifying. There's a difference." "You've taught me that," I acknowledged. "That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway." Iris shifted so she could look at me properly. "You know what you've taught me? That healing isn't a solo journey. That we need witnesses, people who see us in our vulnerability and don't look away. You let me be that witness for you, and in doing so, you gave me permission to be vulnerable too." "Reciprocal healing," I murmured, the phrase feeling truer with each repetition. We sat in companionable silence for a while. And then Iris said, "Want to know a secret?" "Always." "When I first saw you in that hallway, before I even spoke to you, I felt this pull. Like recognition, but deeper. Like my soul knew your soul, if that doesn't sound too mystical." "It sounds perfect," I said. I felt it too. Scared the hell out of me, actually, because I knew somehow I knew that you were going to change my life. And was I right? She asked, a playful glint in her eye. "Did I change your life?" "You saved my life," I said seriously. "Or at least you showed me how to save myself." "That's even better." We made love that night with a new dimension, not just physical desire, though that was certainly present, but also celebration. Celebrating the journey we traveled, the fear we'd overcome, the future we were building together. Afterward, as we lay tangled together in the darkness, Iris said sleepily, "I'm going to marry you someday." Maya Chen, my heart skipped. "Is that a proposal?" "It's a promise," she said. "A preview of coming attractions." I smiled into the darkness, feeling more content than I'd ever thought possible. "I'm going to hold you to that." "Please do," she murmured, already drifting off. I stayed awake a bit longer, my mind too active for sleep despite my body's exhaustion. I thought about all the small choices that had led to this moment, the decision to walk into Studio B, to let Iris draw me, to agree to the gallery showing, To keep showing up even when it was hard. Each choice had felt monumental in the moment, terrifying and uncertain. But strung together, they created a path from shame to acceptance, from hiding to being seen, from loneliness to love. And tomorrow, that path would continue. There would be new challenges, new opportunities to practice courage, new moments of vulnerability. The journey wasn't over just because we'd had one successful gallery opening, but that was okay. Because I wasn't traveling alone anymore. I had Iris beside me, and I had a growing community of people committed to the same work of healing and acceptance. As I finally drifted off to sleep, my last thought was of gratitude for the journey, for the struggle, for the woman sleeping beside me, and for the body that had carried me through all. The weeks following the gallery opening brought changes I never anticipated. Iris's Bodies of Truth series received significant media attention, with several art magazines running features on our work. And because I'd chosen to be public about being the model for the centerpiece painting, I suddenly found myself in the middle of conversations about body positivity and representation in art. A journalist from a local lifestyle magazine reached out, wanting to interview me about my experience modeling and having my body displayed publicly. I almost declined the idea of talking about something so personal to a stranger. Felt vulnerable in a whole new way, but Iris encouraged me to consider it. You have a story that could help people, she said as we discussed it over breakfast one Saturday morning. And you get to control the narrative. Tell it on your terms. So I agreed, and the journalist, a kind woman named Patricia who'd struggled with her own body image issues, came to Iris's studio for the interview. We talked for hours about my journey from shame to acceptance, about what it meant to let myself be seen, about the ongoing process of learning to love my body. It's not like I woke up one day and suddenly loved every part of myself, I told her honestly. There are still hard days. Still moments when I look in the mirror and hear all those old critical voices. But they don't control me anymore. They don't get to dictate how I move through the world. The article ran 2 weeks later with the headline, "She Saw Me Naked." And I finally loved my body, one woman's journey to self-acceptance through art. It featured photos of Iris's painting alongside pictures of me in Iris's studio fully clothed. But clearly me, the response was overwhelming. My social media, which I'd barely used before, exploded with messages from people sharing their own stories of body shame and slow healing. Women and men of all ages reaching out to say that reading about my experience had given them courage to book that beach vacation, to go skinny dipping, to let their partners see them in daylight, to simply exist in their bodies without constant apology. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from a teenage girl who'd been considering an eating disorder treatment program but kept backing out because she was terrified of the work it would require. She wrote, "Reading about how you chose to be vulnerable, even though you were scared, made me realize that I can do hard things too. I start treatment next week. Thank you for being brave so I could be brave too." I cried when I read it, showing it to Iris through my tears. "This is what I mean," she said softly. "Your vulnerability creates space for other people's healing. That's the power of being seen." The article also brought an unexpected opportunity. A woman named Dr. Chen, no relation despite the shared last name, reached out to me through the magazine. She was a therapist who specialized in body image issues and was writing a book about the intersection of art, vulnerability, and healing. "I'd love to include your story," she said when we met for coffee. "And I'd also love to hire you as a consultant on the project. Your perspective as someone who's lived this journey would be invaluable." The work with Dr. Chen opened up a whole new world. I attended therapy groups for people struggling with body image, sharing my story and facilitating discussions about shame and acceptance. I helped review chapters of her book, offering insights from lived experience. And slowly, I began to understand that my journey wasn't just about personal healing. It was about collective healing too. 6 months after the gallery opening, Fee was about collective healing too. Iris proposed an idea that terrified and excited me in equal measure. "What if we did a workshop?" she suggested. "Combining art and body positivity. I could teach people to draw or paint, and you could facilitate conversations about body acceptance. We could create a space where people practice seeing themselves and others with compassion." "I'm not an expert," I protested. "I'm still figuring this out myself." "That's exactly why you're the perfect person to do it," she countered. You're not selling some finished product of perfect self-love. You're showing people the messy, ongoing process. That's what people need, not perfection, but honesty. We started small, hosting monthly workshops in Iris's shared studio space. The first few sessions were attended by friends and acquaintances, people from the figure drawing class and the gallery opening. But word spread, and soon we had strangers signing up, people of all ages and backgrounds. United by the shared experience of struggling with body shame, the format was simple. Iris would lead the group through a drawing exercise, usually self-portraits or drawing from observation, while I facilitated conversation about the emotions that came up, the stories we told ourselves about our bodies, the ways we might reframe our thinking. What's one thing you appreciate about your body right now? I ask at the beginning of each session. At first, people struggled to answer. But as the weeks went on, the responses became more fluid, more genuine. My legs that carried me on a hike this weekend. My hands that can create beautiful things. My stomach that's soft and perfect for my cat to sleep on. My scars that tell the story of a life fully lived. Watching people's relationships with their bodies shift even incrementally was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And doing it alongside Iris, seeing her passion for empowering people through art, only deepened my love for her. We'd been together for almost a year when she asked me to move in officially. I'd been practically living at her place anyway, and my lease was up for renewal, so it made practical sense. But it was also a commitment, a declaration that this was real and lasting. I know it's fast by some standards, Iris said as we discussed it, but it also feels inevitable, you know? Like we're just acknowledging what's already true. I feel the same way, I agreed. Like you've been my home for a while now. We're just making it official. Moving in together brought its own adjustments. We had to navigate sharing space, combining our belongings, figuring out whose cooking habits would prevail, hers definitely hers. But even the challenging moments felt right, felt like we were building something solid and real. My parents came to visit a few months after I moved in, their first trip to see my life in this city. I was nervous about them meeting Iris, about seeing our shared space through their more conservative eyes, but Iris won them over almost immediately with her warmth in her cooking and her genuine interest in their lives. My mother, who'd been so skeptical about my choices, soft as she watched Iris and me together. "You're happy," she said to me quietly while Iris and my father were doing dishes after dinner. "I haven't seen you this comfortable in your own skin in years. Maybe ever." "I am happy," I confirmed. "Happier than I knew was possible." "Then I'm happy for you," she said, and I could see her struggling with old beliefs and new understanding. "I don't understand everything about your life, Maya, but I can see that it's a good life, that you found someone who loves you well. It wasn't everything. We didn't talk about the gallery showing, or the article or my body acceptance work, but it was progress. And I was learning that progress was enough. That healing happened in increments, not overnight transformations. 2 years after I first walked into Studio B, after I first let myself be seen, I found myself back in that same community center hallway. But this time, I wasn't the one frozen with fear outside the door. A young woman, probably early 20s, stood in the same spot I'd occupied, clutching an enrollment form, her face a mirror of the terror I'd felt. "You thinking about going in?" I asked gently. She startled, then nodded. "I signed up to model for the figure drawing class, but I can't seem to make myself open the door." "I've been exactly where you are," I said, and recognition flickered in her eyes. "Where are you, Maya Chen? From the article? And the painting?" I nodded, still sometimes surprised when people recognized my name. "Oh my God," she said, her nervousness momentarily forgotten. "Reading your story is part of why I signed up for this. I thought if you could do it, maybe I could too. But now I'm here and I'm freaking out." "That's normal," I assured her. I freaked out too. 4 separate times I stood in this exact spot before I finally went in. "What made you finally do it?" I thought about Iris, about her paint-stained fingers and kind eyes. Someone reminded me that I was tired of hiding, that my body didn't need to be a source of shame. And sometimes, when you're tired enough of living small, you find courage you didn't know you had. The woman she introduced herself as Alex took a shaky breath. "I'm so tired of hiding. But I'm so scared of being seen." They're not mutually exclusive, I told her. You can be both scared and brave at the same time. In fact, that's usually how courage works. I offered to walk in with her, and she accepted gratefully. As we entered Studio B together, I felt the strangest sense of déjà vu mixed with progress. Here I was, full circle, but transformed. Margaret was still teaching the class, and she greeted me warmly. Maya, what a wonderful surprise. Are you here to model tonight? Actually, I'm just here supporting a new model, I said, gesturing to Alex, but I could stay and draw if that's okay. We'd love to have you, Margaret said, then turned to Alex. And you must be our model for tonight. Don't worry, dear. Everyone here is respectful and professional. Take all the time you need. I set up at an easel strange to be on this side of the experience while Alex went to change. When she emerged in the robe, she caught my eye and I gave her an encouraging nod, watching her take that first vulnerable step onto the platform. Seeing the way she fought with herself before letting the robe fall, I was transported back to my own first time. I remembered the terror, the shame, the certain knowledge that I was making a terrible mistake. But I also remembered the moment when something shifted. When I realized that the artists weren't seeing me as disgusting or wrong, but simply as a person. A body, a subject worthy of attention and care. Alex held a standing pose for the first 5 minutes, and I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was barely breathing. But as the session continued, I watched her begin to relax, to settle into her skin. During the break, she came over to where I was sketching. Can I see? She asked nervously. I turned my sketchbook to show her my drawing. It wasn't as technically skilled as Iris's work. I'd only been drawing seriously for about a year, but I tried to capture what I saw. A young woman choosing courage. Her body strong and vulnerable and real. Is that really how you see me? She asked, echoing the question I'd once asked Iris. It's how you are, I said. Beautiful and brave. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Thank you. For being here tonight. For going first so the rest of us could follow. After the session ended, Alex and I exchanged numbers. I invited her to one of the workshops Iris and I ran, and she eagerly accepted walking home that night. I thought about the journey that had brought me from paralyzed fear to being able to support someone else through their own vulnerability. How trauma and healing could both create ripples, spreading outward in ways we never anticipated. Iris was waiting up for me when I got home, working on a new painting by the light of her desk lamp. How'd it go? She asked, setting down her brush to pull me into a hug. Good, really good, actually. I told her about Alex, about the sense of full circle completion I'd felt. It made me realize how far I've come, not just in accepting my body, but in being able to help others do the same. You're amazing, Iris said, kissing my forehead. Have I told you that lately? You tell me every day, I said. But I never get tired of hearing it. We moved to the couch, and I curled up against her, feeling the solid warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart. I've been thinking, Iris said after a moment, about the future, about what we want to build together, yeah? I prompted, sensing this was important. I want to expand the workshops, maybe even turn them into a real program, something more structured and accessible. Partner with therapists and community centers. Create spaces in different cities where people can come together and practice radical body acceptance through art. That's a big vision, I said, but I could feel excitement building in my chest. I know. And I want to do it with you. As partners both in life and in work. What do you think? I set up to look at her properly. I think it's brilliant. I think it's exactly the kind of work the world needs. And I think we'd be good at it together, yeah? Her eyes were bright with hope and possibility. Yeah, I confirmed. Let's do it. We spent the rest of the night brainstorming, ideas flowing between us like they always did. Iris sketched out concepts while I took notes. Our different skills complementing each other perfectly dot at some point. I paused to look at her, really look at her, this woman who'd seen me at my most vulnerable and loved me through it. Who'd shown me that my body could be a source of power instead of shame. Who taught me that being seen was a gift, not a punishment? What? She asked, noticing my gaze. I'm just thinking about how different my life is now. 2 years ago, I couldn't even stand to look at my own naked body in private. And now I'm helping other people learn to love theirs. It's kind of miraculous when you think about it. You did the work, Maya. You chose healing over hiding. We did the work, I corrected. This wasn't a solo journey. You've been with me every step, seeing me, showing me how to see myself differently. Iris set aside her sketchbook and pulled me closer. You know what I love most about us? We've both grown so much, but we've grown together. You helped me learn to see my own worth beyond my art, to understand that I'm valuable even when I'm not being productive. We've healed each other. Reciprocal healing, I murmured. I like that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. And I marveled at how something that had started with such fear and vulnerability had led to this, to partnership and purpose and a love that felt both gentle and fierce. Marry me? Iris said suddenly. I pulled back to look at her, my heart stuttering. What? Marry me, she repeated, and I could see she was as surprised by the words as I was. I know we haven't talked about it, and I don't have a ring. And this is probably not how you imagine being proposed to. Yes, I interrupted. But I love you and I want to build this life with you officially, and wait, yes? Yes, I said again, laughing through happy tears. Yes, I'll marry you. I want to build this life with you too. She kissed me then, deep and sweet and full of promise, and I tasted salt from tears, mine or hers. I wasn't sure. Probably both. I'm going to design you the most beautiful ring, she said when we finally broke apart. Something unique and perfect and completely you. I don't need perfect, I said. I just need you. Planning a wedding while launching a nonprofit turned out to be delightfully chaotic. Iris and I decided to keep the ceremony small and intimate, just close. Friends and family, but we wanted the reception to be bigger. A celebration that included the community we built through our body positivity. Workshops. The university lecture series with Dr. Morrison began 3 months after the gallery opening. Standing in front of a classroom full of students, their young faces eager and skeptical in equal measure, I felt the familiar flutter of nervousness. I'm not here as an expert, I told them at the start of our first session. I'm here as someone who's lived through the struggle of body shame and come out the other side. Or rather, I'm still coming out the other side because this work is ongoing. Iris stood beside me, her laptop connected to the projector, ready to show her artwork. What we want to share with you today, she added, is how art, both creating it and being the subject of it, can be a tool for transformation. Over the 8-week course, we covered everything from the history of body representation in art to the modern diet industry's impact on body image. From the specific challenges faced by marginalized communities to practical tools for building body acceptance. But the most powerful sessions were the ones where students shared their own stories. A young trans man talked about the dysphoria of living in a body that didn't match his identity, and the complicated journey of transitioning while also learning to love himself. A woman in her early 20s, a Division I athlete, shared how the pressure to maintain a certain body composition had led to an eating disorder that nearly destroyed her sports career. I thought my body was just a tool, she said through tears. During one particularly emotional class, a machine I had to optimize for performance, I forgot it was also the vessel for my entire existence. Hearing you talk about your journey, Maya, helped me realize I need to make peace with my body, not just use it. These moments of connection, of shared vulnerability reminded me why this work mattered. Every person carrying shame around their body was fighting a battle largely invisible to others. Creating space for those battles to be acknowledged and addressed felt sacred. One afternoon after class, a quiet student named Marcus approached us. He'd barely spoken throughout the semester, always sitting in the back, observing but rarely engaging. I wanted to thank you, he said, his voice soft. I'm struggling with my body in ways I can't really talk about. With being fat, with being gay, with feeling like I don't fit anywhere. Watching you two, how you've built this life together, how you've turned your pain into purpose, it gives me hope that maybe I can too. I felt Iris's hand find mine as I looked at Marcus. You absolutely can, I told him. It won't be easy and it won't be linear, but healing is possible. And you don't have to do it alone. That's what community is for. We gave him information about our workshops, about therapists who specialized in body image and LGBTQ+ issues, about support groups, and watching him walk away with a little more light in his eyes than when he'd arrived. I felt that familiar sense of purpose settle over me. "We're making a difference," Iris said quietly once Marcus had left. "We are," I agreed. "One person at a time." My parents struggled with the gay wedding thing more than I'd hoped, but less than I'd feared. My mother cried when I showed her my dress as simple, elegant design that hugged my curves in a way that made me feel beautiful and told me I looked radiant. "I wish I understood your journey better," she admitted as we sat together in the bridal shop. "The body acceptance work, the gallery showing, it's all so far outside my experience. But I can see that it's made you whole in a way you weren't before. And that's what matters to me." "That's all I need, Mom," I said, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to understand everything. Just love me through it." "I do," she said. "I always have, even when I didn't know how to show it well." Iris's parents, in contrast, were effortlessly welcoming. Her mother had made her living as a social worker, and her father was a retired teacher, both of them. Naturally warm and accepting people who'd raised Iris to question norms and think critically about the world. We always knew Iris would find someone special, her mother told me over dinner one night. Someone who matched her passion and her heart. "I'm so glad it's you, Maya." The nonprofit we were building, we named it Bodies of Truth, after Iris's painting series was taking shape faster than we'd anticipated. Dr. Chen connected us with therapists who wanted to incorporate art therapy into their practices. Community centers reached out asking us to bring our workshops to their neighborhoods. We even received a small grant from an arts foundation that believed in our mission. "We're going to need to hire help," Iris said one night, surrounded by paperwork and grant applications. "This is getting too big for just the two of us to manage while also planning a wedding." So we brought on Jamie, a non-binary artist and organizer who'd attended several of our workshops and had experience running community programs. They brought fresh ideas and organizational skills that neither Iris nor I possessed. And suddenly Bodies of Truth felt like a real organization, not just a passion project. We piloted our first 6-week structured program that spring, working with a group of 12 participants who committed to weekly sessions combining art making, group discussion, and body acceptance practices. Watching the transformation in those participants, seeing people who arrived wrapped in shame gradually unfold into more self-accepting versions of themselves, reaffirmed everything we believed about the power of vulnerability and community. One participant, a man in his 50s named Robert, shared during our final session, "I've spent 30 years hating my body, hiding it, punishing it, wishing I could be someone else. 6 weeks isn't going to erase all that. But for the first time, I have hope that change is possible. I have tools, and I have a community that sees me and doesn't look away." Stories like Robert's kept me going on the hard days, when old doubts crept back in, when I looked in the mirror and heard echoes of self-criticism. Healing really wasn't linear. I had good days and bad days, moments of confidence and moments of struggle. But the difference now was that I had perspective. I could observe the difficult moments without being consumed by them. I could reach out to Iris or my therapist or my community instead of spiraling alone. I'd built a scaffolding of support around myself, and it held me even when I felt shaky. The wedding took place on a warm June evening in the botanical gardens, surrounded by flowers and trees and the people we loved most. I walked down the aisle without anyone giving me away because I wasn't property to be transferred. Iris and I had decided, but an autonomous person choosing partnership. Iris waited for me at the altar in a burgundy suit that made her look unfairly gorgeous. And when our eyes met, everything else faded away. It was just us, choosing each other, promising to keep choosing each other. We'd written our own vows. Mine went like this: "Iris, you saw me when I couldn't see myself. You held up a mirror and showed me truth instead of the lies I'd been taught to believe. You taught me that my body isn't something to be fixed or hidden, but something to be honored for carrying me through this life. You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we can do. I promise to keep being brave with you, to keep showing up even on the hard days, to see with the same loving eyes you've used to see me, to build a life together that's rooted in honesty and acceptance and the kind of love that makes space for all of who we are. I choose you today and every day exactly as you are." Iris's vows made me cry. "Maya, the first time I saw you in that hallway, I recognized something of myself, the fear, the courage, the determination to be more than our shame. Watching you step onto that platform was like watching someone claim their birthright, and I felt honored to witness it. These past 2 years, you've taught me about resilience and the ongoing work of healing. You've shown me that love can be a practice, something we choose and re-choose every day. I promise to keep seeing you, to keep celebrating your body, your heart, your brilliant mind, to support your continued growth while doing my own work, to create art with you and life with you and a future that holds space for both our dreams. I choose you, Maya Chen, and all your beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect humanity. We kissed to thunderous applause. And I felt something shift, a sense of arriving. Somewhere I'd been traveling toward my whole life without knowing. The reception was held in a gallery space appropriate for 2 people who'd found each other through art Iris had created. A new piece specifically for the occasion. A painting of our intertwined hands, paint-stained and real, titled Partnership. We danced our first dance to a song about coming home, and as Iris held me close, I thought about how this body I'd spent so many years fighting against, was now the body that got to experience this joy. Got to feel the warmth of my wife's arms, the happiness radiating from my chest, the fullness of being completely, authentically myself. During the reception, several of our workshop participants approached to congratulate us and share their own updates. Alex, the young woman I'd met outside Studio B, told me she'd started her own blog about body acceptance and was building a following of people who resonated with her message. You and Iris showed me this was possible, she said. Not just accepting my body, but using my story to help others. I want to pay that forward. You already are, I assured her. And I can't wait to see where you go from here. As the evening wound down and Iris and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, a week in a cabin in the mountains, where we planned to do absolutely nothing but rest and be together, I took a moment to stand on the edge of the dance floor and just observe all these people connected by a shared journey towards self-acceptance. All these stories of transformation, of choosing vulnerability over hiding. And in the center of it all, Iris and me, 2 women who'd found each other through art and fear and the radical act of being seen, ready to go. Iris appeared at my elbow, her suit jacket discarded, her hair tumbling loose from its pins. Ready, I confirmed. Taking her hand out as we walked out of the gallery into the warm summer night, she squeezed my fingers. How are you feeling, Mrs. Park-chun? We decided to hyphenate our last names, unable to choose which to take or give up. It felt right emerging of identities, both of us bringing our full selves to this union. I'm feeling loved, I said. Seen, grateful, happy, all the good things. Good things, she echoed, pulling me close to kiss my temple. That's all I want for us. All the good things. The honeymoon was exactly what we needed, a week of sleeping in, cooking simple meals, taking long hikes through the woods, making love in the afternoon light without urgency or agenda. We talked about our dreams for bodies of truth, about potentially writing a book together about our journey, about maybe someday starting a family. I think I'd like to be a parent, I said one afternoon as we sat in the cabin's porch watching the sunset. Not right away, but eventually. Is that something you want? I've been thinking about it too, Iris admitted. I love the idea of raising a kid in a home where body positivity and self-acceptance are foundational values, where they grow up knowing their body is good and worthy exactly as it is. We'd be good at that, I said confidently. Breaking cycles, creating new narratives. We would, she agreed. Then added with a grin, though I reserve the right to be terrified when the time actually comes. Deal, we can be terrified together. On our last night at the cabin, we sat by the fireplace with blankets wrapped around us, comfortable in the silence that only comes with deep companionship. Can I tell you something? I said eventually, always. I used to imagine what happiness would feel like. I thought it would be this loud, dramatic thing, fireworks and certainty and the absence of all fear or doubt. But this, I gestured between us, around us, this quiet contentment. This sense of being exactly where I'm supposed to be, this is better than anything I imagined. Iris smiled. That soft smile that still made my heart skip. I know exactly what you mean. Happiness isn't the absence of struggle. It's having someone to struggle with. It's building a life that feels true even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, I added. We stayed up late that night, talking about everything and nothing, and when we finally went to bed, I fell asleep wrapped in my wife's arms, my body relaxed and undefeated. My heart full. 5 years after I first stood naked on that platform in Studio B, I found myself on a different kind of platform, a stage at a university, giving a keynote address about body acceptance and the arts. Bodies of Truth had grown beyond anything Iris and I had initially imagined. We now had chapters in 7 cities, a robust online community, partnerships with schools and therapy practices, and a waiting list for our flagship 6-week programs. The book we'd written together, a combination of memoir, practical guidance, and Iris's art, had become a bestseller in the body positivity space, but more than any external success, what mattered most was the community we built and the lives we touched. Every week, I received messages from people sharing their own journeys from shame to acceptance, crediting our work with helping them take those first scary steps. I'd also maintained relationships with many of the people who come through our programs. Marcus, the quiet student from our university course, had become a vocal advocate for body positivity in the LGBTQ community, running his own workshops for queer youth. Alex, the young woman I'd met outside Studio B, had published her own book about her journey. Rebecca, whose post-mastectomy portrait Iris had painted, now facilitated support groups for breast cancer survivors, incorporating art therapy into the healing process, watching the ripple effects of our work, how one person's healing could inspire another's. Creating cascading waves of transformation never stopped feeling miraculous. The keynote I was about to deliver was part of a national conference on body image and mental health, attended by therapists, educators, activists, and researchers from across the country. Iris sat in the front row, Ruby on her lap, both of them giving me encouraging smiles as I stood at the podium looking out at the audience, hundreds of faces. All turned toward me expectantly. I thought about how to distill everything I'd learned into this talk. I used to believe my body was my enemy, I began. A source of shame that I needed to hide, to fix, to apologize for. For years, I lived at war with my own flesh, seeing it through eyes trained by a culture that profits from our self-hatred. And then something shifted. Not overnight. Healing never happens overnight, but through a series of small, terrifying choices to be vulnerable, to let myself be seen, I began to understand that my body wasn't my enemy. It was my home. This body, with all its supposed imperfections, had carried me through every moment of my life. It had healed from injuries, adapted to challenges, experienced joy and pleasure and pain. It had never betrayed me. I'd betrayed it by seeing it as less than worthy. Learning to love my body wasn't about achieving some perfect state of self-acceptance. It wasn't about reaching a point where I never felt insecure or struggled with negative thoughts. It was about building a new relationship, one based on compassion instead of criticism, on gratitude instead of shame. The art that my wife creates, the workshops we facilitate together, the community we've built, all of it is rooted in one simple truth, that every body is worthy of being seen, being celebrated, being loved exactly as it is. Not after weight loss or muscle gain, not after surgery or modification, but right now, in this present moment. And when we dare to believe that truth about ourselves, when we dare to stand up and say, "This is me," without apology, that's when we change not just our own lives, but the culture around us. That's when we make space for others to do the same. I shared stories from our workshops, talked about the science of body image and shame, offered practical tools for building a more compassionate relationship with our bodies. But mostly, I told the truth, the messy, ongoing truth of what healing actually looks like. I talked about the specific strategies that had helped me, mirror work, even when it was painful. Surrounding myself with diverse body-positive content to retrain my visual palette. Working with a therapist who specialized in body image. Finding community with other people doing the same work. Practicing self-compassion when I had setbacks. One technique that helped me enormously, I shared, was writing letters to my body parts. I know it sounds strange, but bear with me. I would choose a part of my body I struggled with, my stomach, for instance, and I'd write it a letter. First, I'd acknowledge all the critical things I'd thought about it, getting it all out on paper. And then I'd try to write from a different perspective. "Dear stomach, I'm sorry I've been so cruel to you. Thank you for digesting my food, for processing nutrients, for being soft enough to make a comfortable pillow for my cat. I saw several people in the audience nodding, some taking notes. The letters felt ridiculous at first. Sometimes I'd cry writing them. But over time, something shifted. I started to see my body less as an object to be judged and more as a partner I'd been mistreating. Someone, or rather, something that deserved my kindness. I also talked about the setbacks, the days when all the positive work felt impossible. Just last week, I admitted, I had a moment where I looked in the mirror and felt that old familiar shame wash over me. Despite years of work, despite this whole career I've built around body acceptance, I still had that moment of hating what I saw. What did you do? Someone called out from the audience. I called my wife, I said simply. I told her I was having a hard body image day. She came home early from her studio and we made dinner together, and she reminded me of all the things my body had done that week, played with our daughter, helped paint a mural at the community center, made love, lived. And slowly, the shame loosened its grip. After the talk, during the Q&A, a young woman raised her hand. How do you deal with setbacks? She asked, her voice wavering slightly. Days when all the body positivity work feels impossible and you just hate what you see in the mirror? I appreciated the honesty and vulnerability of the question. I have those days still, I admitted, my voice filled with empathy. More often than I'd like. The difference now is that I have tools to work through them. I have a wife who reminds me of my worth. I have a therapist. I have a community. I have years of evidence that the critical voice in my head is lying. But also, I've learned to be gentle with those hard days. To not see them as failure or regression, but as part of the ebb and flow of being human. Some days I feel confident and powerful in my body. Some days I struggle. Both are valid. Both are part of the journey. After the event, Iris was waiting for me outside the auditorium, holding our daughter in her arms. Ruby was 2 years old, all dark curls and chubby cheeks and infinite energy. We'd adopted her as an infant through an open adoption, and watching her grow into her personality had been one of the greatest joys of my life. Mama. Ruby squealed when she saw me, reaching out her arms. I took her from Iris, burying my face in her neck to breathe in that sweet toddler smell. Hi, baby. Were you good for Mom? She was perfect, Iris said, kissing my cheek. How'd it go? Really well, I think. Got some good questions, made some solid connections. We walked to the car together, Iris's hand in mine. Ruby babbling about the park where they'd been playing while I gave my talk. This is my life now, full of purpose and partnership. Of work that mattered and love that sustained. That night, after we'd put Ruby to bed, Iris and I sat together in our home studio. We'd moved to a bigger place when Ruby came along and she showed me her latest painting. It was our family Iris. And me and Ruby painted in her signature style. Not idealized or prettified, but real. My body exactly as it was, soft and curvy and strong. Iris's slender frame, Ruby's toddler roundness. All of us rendered with that loving attention that had first taught me how to see myself differently. It's for Ruby, Iris explained. For when she's older. I want her to grow up seeing images of her family that celebrate our bodies as they are. I want her to never learn the shame we had to unlearn. It's perfect, I said, emotion thick in my throat. We'd worked so hard to create a home where body positivity wasn't just theoretical but lived. Where we talked about bodies with Ruby using neutral, factual language. Where we never commented on weight or appearance. Where we modeled confidence and self-acceptance even on the days we didn't fully feel it. Do you think it'll be enough? I asked. All our efforts to protect her from the messages that hurt us? No, Iris said honestly. The world will get to her eventually. We can't shield her from everything. But we can give her a foundation. We can teach her to question those messages instead of automatically believing them. We can surround her with people who see all bodies as worthy. And we can show her every single day that she is loved exactly as she is. I leaned against her, feeling the solid warmth of her beside me. We're really doing this, I marveled. Building a whole new legacy. We really are, she agreed. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror in our bedroom. For a moment, just a moment, I saw myself through the old critical lens. The softness around my middle, the stretch marks, the asymmetry. But then I adjusted my view, seeing myself the way Iris saw me, the way I'd learned to see myself through years of practice. I saw a body that had carried me through marathons and illness, through pregnancy loss and eventually adoption, through countless hours of standing in front of rooms teaching body acceptance. I saw a body that had made love and created art and held my daughter close. I saw a body that was worthy exactly as it was. Still beautiful, Iris said from behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Still becoming, I corrected with a smile, because that was the truth of it. I was still in process. Still learning, still growing into fuller acceptance of myself. The journey didn't end with a wedding or a baby or professional success. It continued, day after day, choice after choice. Moment after moment of deciding to see myself with compassion instead of contempt. As we climbed into bed together, Iris pulled me close, her body fitting perfectly against mine in the way it had from the beginning. "Thank you," I said into the darkness. "For what?" "For seeing me. For helping me see myself. For everything." "Always," she murmured against my hair. "I'll always see you, Maya, even when you can't see yourself." And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about that scared woman who'd stood outside Studio B all those years ago, convinced that being seen would destroy her. How could she have known that being seen, truly, fully seen, would actually save her? How could she have known that vulnerability would lead to love, that shame could be transformed into strength, that the body she'd spent so many years hiding would become a source of power and purpose? She couldn't have known. She could only take that first terrifying step, and then another and another, until one day she looked back and realized she'd traveled further than she'd ever imagined possible. That's what I want to tell everyone who's still standing in that hallway, frozen with fear. Step through the door. Let yourself be seen. The journey will be hard and beautiful and transformative in ways you can't yet imagine. And on the other side of your fear, you might just find yourself the truest, most authentic version of yourself you've ever been. You might find love. You might find purpose. You might find that the body you've been at war with could become your greatest ally. You might find, as I did, that being seen is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of your life, dear Maya. I'm writing to you from 5 years in the future. I know you're standing in that hallway right now, terrified to walk through the door into Studio B. Your hands are shaking, your heart is racing, and you're absolutely convinced that being seen, truly seen, will destroy you. I need you to know it won't. I need you to know that on the other side of that door is a journey that will transform your entire life. Not easily, not painlessly, but completely. You're going to meet a woman named Iris who will see you, all of you, and not turn away. She'll show you that your body isn't something broken that needs fixing. It's something whole that deserves celebration. She'll paint you with such love and care that you'll finally understand you've been beautiful all along. You just needed eyes that knew how to see. You're going to stand naked in front of strangers, and instead of the judgment you fear, you'll find acceptance. You're going to let yourself be photographed, painted, written about. You're going to use your story to help other people find their way out of shame. You're going to build something meaningful from your pain. You're going to fall in love. Not just with Iris, though. That love will be the foundation of everything, but also with yourself, slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks and struggles. But genuinely, you're going to become a mother. Can you imagine that? You, who can barely stand to exist in your own body, will one day hold a daughter and teach her that her body is a gift. You'll break the cycles that hurt you. You'll create new patterns of love and acceptance. You're going to help people. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands if you count the ripple effects. People who are standing where you're standing, now paralyzed by shame, convinced they're unworthy. You're going to show them another way. But here's what I need you to understand most. None of this means the hard days will disappear. 5 years from now, I still have moments of doubt. I still sometimes look in the mirror and hear those old critical voices. Healing isn't linear and it's never complete. There's no magical finish line where you're suddenly cured of all insecurity. What changes is your relationship to those moments. You learn to observe them without being consumed by them. You build tools, community, practices that help you weather the storms. You develop compassion for yourself, the same compassion you so freely give to others. So here's my advice. Maya, walk through that door. Let yourself be seen. Trust that vulnerability won't destroy you, it will transform you. Trust that on the other side of fear is a life more beautiful than you can currently imagine. Your body is not your enemy. It's been carrying you through this hard, beautiful life, and it deserves your kindness. Start giving it now. Start with one small choice to be brave. Then another. Then another. The woman you're becoming, the woman I am now, is grateful beyond words that you'll make that choice. That you'll step onto that platform. That you'll let Iris paint you. That you'll say yes to love, yes to healing, yes to life. I'm proud of you, Maya, for your courage. For your willingness to grow. For choosing yourself again and again, even when it's terrifying. Step through the door. I promise you won't regret it. With love and gratitude, Maya Park Shun 5 years in the future.